Every van lifer who has spent more than a season traveling the American West has photographed at least one abandoned ghost town. The wooden storefronts leaning against the desert wind, the rusted mining equipment beside the road, the cemeteries where the headstones list occupations that have not existed for a century. The ghost towns of the American West are among the most photographed subjects in the entire van life content economy, appearing across Instagram feeds and YouTube channels as the visual shorthand for the freedom and adventure the arrangement promises. What the content does not show is the pattern the community has been documenting through the private forums for over a decade. Van lifers who overnight at certain particular abandoned ghost towns of the American West have been disappearing at rates that no state agency has ever formally acknowledged, and the disappearances follow patterns that connect the affected locations across state lines in ways that no single jurisdiction has the authority or the interest to investigate. Tonight, we are going through 8 of those ghost towns in order from bad to the worst. Every location on this list has hard numbers behind it. A documented disappearance pattern the community has been tracking through the private forums for years, or a jurisdictional void that means if something happens to you inside its boundary, no agency with authority is going to open a case file with your name on it. This is the map the ghost town tourism websites will never publish. This is the map the free camping apps will never show you. And wait until you see what is sitting at the top of this list. A single ghost town along a road so isolated that the nearest developed community sits over 40 miles away earned that spot for one particular reason. A solo van lifer named Sarah Kowalski disappeared from a scenic overlook a mile outside its boundary in April of this year, and her family in Minneapolis has been spending $21,000 of their own money trying to find out what happened to her. Let us get into it. Ghost towns present a unique set of challenges that van lifers navigating the current environment do not encounter at any other overnight location. They exist outside developed community infrastructure, meaning there is no local population to notice unusual activity. They exist inside jurisdictional gaps between county, state, federal, and sometimes tribal authorities, meaning when something happens inside the boundary, the question of which agency should investigate can take weeks to resolve. They exist in cellular dead zones across substantial portions of their operational periods, meaning van lifers who experience incidents at these locations typically cannot call for help even during the initial hours when emergency response might otherwise be effective. And they attract the exact van lifer demographic most likely to travel alone, photograph at odd hours, and remain overnight at locations that community members with more experience would treat as strict daytime destinations. Van lifers who understand these conditions typically photograph the ghost towns during afternoon hours and then relocate to develop campgrounds before sunset. Van lifers who do not understand these conditions are the population this video is about. The community calls the cost of doing this properly the ghost town premium. You photograph the ruins during the golden hour, you drive the extra 60 miles back to the nearest developed community. You pay the $50 or $60 for a spot at the RV park or the state campground. And you sleep somewhere with actual people around you. The Ghost Town Premium is the cheapest insurance policy anybody photographing the American West will ever purchase. The alternative is what the trucker community calls the disappearance discount. You save the $60, you sleep at the pullout outside the ruins, and your family spends the next 2 years of their savings trying to find out what happened to you. Number 8 is Bodie, California, the state historic park in the eastern Sierra Nevada that draws over 200,000 visitors annually to view the preserved storefronts and structures of what was once one of the largest mining boom towns in the American West. Bodie technically prohibits overnight parking within the park boundary, but the community has been documenting van lifers who overnight at the pullouts along Bodie Road within the last 3 miles of the approach to the park entrance. The area appears to be safe because the state historic park designation creates an assumption of active ranger presence, but the assumption is inaccurate. The California State Park System assigns 3 permanent staff members to Bodie during the operational season and drops staffing to 0 during the winter closure months. 5 van lifers have disappeared from the Bodie Road corridor in the past 3 years. Every recovered vehicle was found at a pullout beyond the 2nd mile marker from the park entrance, in the sections where cellular coverage drops to 0 and where the nearest emergency response from Bridgeport requires approximately 45 minutes to arrive. The community wisdom on Bodie is to visit during park hours and to sleep in Bridgeport or Mammoth Lakes. The additional $50 for the developed campground is the cheapest insurance you will ever purchase. Number 7 is Rhyolite, Nevada, the abandoned mining town approximately 4 miles east of the Death Valley National Park boundary along State Route 374. Rhyolite draws Vanlifers because the location combines photogenic ghost town structures with proximity to Death Valley itself, allowing content creators to capture both subjects during a single overnight trip. The area sits in Nye County, Nevada, patrolled by a sheriff's department of 42 deputies responsible for over 18,000 square miles of terrain. That is 1 deputy per 428 square miles. Vanlifers who overnight at the pullouts along State Route 374 near Rhyolite have reported being approached by vehicles that emerge from the dirt roads leading into the surrounding open desert, being followed for miles along Route 374 by vehicles that operated without headlights during before dawn hours, and in 6 documented cases over the past 4 years, disappearing entirely from a corridor where their vehicles were later recovered locked and undisturbed. The Nye County Sheriff has never publicly connected the Rhyolite disappearances into a pattern. The community has been quietly naming Rhyolite as an active avoidance target on the private forums for over 5 years. Number 6 is Jerome, Arizona, the mountainside mining town that has partially rebuilt itself into a tourist destination, but that still contains substantial abandoned sections along the surrounding hillsides. Jerome draws Vanlifers because the town combines active businesses with ghost town aesthetics in ways that produce ideal content opportunities. Vanlifers who overnight at the pullouts along the Jerome Prescott Road below the town proper have reported being watched from the abandoned mine entrances that dot the hillsides above the road, hearing movement through the collapsed structures during nighttime hours, and, in 7 documented cases over the past 3 years, disappearing from a corridor that the Yavapai County Sheriff's Department patrols, with an average of 1 deputy per 160 square miles. The Jerome pattern involves the abandoned mining infrastructure itself. The hillsides above the town contain hundreds of unmapped mine shafts, adits, and collapsed workings that create a search environment where a disappeared vehicle occupant could be within 100 yards of the road and be effectively impossible to find without specialized underground search equipment that no county sheriff's department in the region possesses. Number 5 is Oatman, Arizona, the Route 66 tourist stop along the historic highway between Kingman and the California state line. Oatman contains a population of approximately 100 permanent residents alongside the ghost town infrastructure that draws Route 66 travelers, and Vanlifers who overnight in the outlying areas beyond the town proper enter a jurisdictional environment where the Mojave County Sheriff nominally has responsibility, but where the actual patrol frequency drops to essentially 0 after sunset. Vanlifers who overnight along the Oatman Highway between the town and the Colorado River have reported being followed by vehicles emerging from the numerous dirt tracks that lead into the surrounding Black Mountains, being approached at pullouts by individuals traveling in unmarked trucks who appeared to be scouting the residential vehicle population, and in 7 documented cases over the past 3 years, disappearing entirely from a corridor where cellular coverage fluctuates unpredictably even during optimal conditions. The community wisdom on Oatman is that the town itself is safe during business hours, but the surrounding highway is one of the most dangerous overnight environments anywhere along the Route 66 corridor. Let me pause here for a moment. If this list is helping you build the second map in your head, hit subscribe. It is free, and unlike the roof rack solar panel that promised to power your entire electrical system, it actually delivers what it says it will. Number 4 is Calico, California, the restored mining town in the Mojave Desert that operates as a San Bernardino County regional park during daytime hours, and that empties completely after the visitor center closes at 5 in the afternoon. Calico draws Vanlifers because the location sits directly off Interstate 15 between Barstow and Las Vegas, making it a convenient overnight stop for travelers running the Los Angeles to Las Vegas corridor. Vanlifers who overnight at the pullouts along Calico Road approaching the park entrance have reported being approached at 3 in the morning by vehicles that emerge from the dirt roads leading into the surrounding open desert, being followed on the return trip to Interstate 15 by vehicles that maintained a consistent following distance across multiple miles, and in 8 documented cases over the past 3 years, disappearing from a corridor where the San Bernardino County Sheriff patrols with approximately 1 deputy per 240 square miles. The San Bernardino County terrain in the Calico area contains hundreds of square miles of open desert with unmarked dirt roads leading to abandoned mining sites where a vehicle can be hidden and effectively never found. The pattern the community has been tracking involves Calico specifically, because the location combines the accessibility of an interstate corridor with the isolation of the surrounding desert, producing operating conditions that attract the exact predator population the disappearances suggest. Number 3 is Cerro, Gordo, California, the privately owned ghost town in the Inyo Mountains above Owens Valley that has become the subject of substantial social media coverage across the past several years, and that draws Vanlifers who arrive to photograph the extensively restored structures. Cerro Gordo sits at approximately 8,500 feet elevation and requires a 9-mile ascent along a steep dirt road from the valley floor. The road quality varies dramatically depending on recent weather, and vehicles that break down along the ascent face survival timelines measured in hours during summer heat and freezing overnight temperatures at higher elevations. Vanlifers, who overnight at the pullouts along the Cerro Gordo access road, have reported being approached at pre-dawn hours by vehicles that emerge from the numerous unmarked tracks leading into the surrounding Inyo National Forest, being watched from the abandoned mining structures that line the ascent, and in 9 documented cases over the past 4 years, disappearing entirely from a corridor where the Inyo County Sheriff patrols with approximately 19 deputies covering an area larger than the state of Vermont. The Cerro Gordo pattern involves both natural and human factors that combine to produce disappearance outcomes at rates the community has been documenting through memorial posts and family search coordination accounts for over 5 years. The town's private ownership status adds an additional jurisdictional layer that complicates response even further. When an incident occurs on the private property itself, the county sheriff coordinates response with the property owner, but incidents that occur along the access road or in the surrounding national forest land fall into different jurisdictions with different response protocols. Vanlifers, who overnight along the ascent, typically do not know which jurisdiction they are technically parked within, and the confusion has produced documented cases where emergency response was delayed for hours, while agencies determined which one should handle the incident. Number 2 is Steins, New Mexico, the abandoned railroad town approximately 20 miles west of Lordsburg along Interstate 10 near the Arizona state line. Steins sits within 20 miles of the Mexican border and functions as a corridor between the border and the interstate transportation network, producing an operating environment where Vanlifers who overnight at the pullouts along the Steins access road can encounter both cartel-related activity moving between the border and the interstate and the local criminal population that has adapted to the same jurisdictional environment. 10 Vanlifers have disappeared from the Steins area in the past 4 years. The Hidalgo County Sheriff, which nominally has jurisdiction over the area, patrols a jurisdiction of over 3,400 square miles with a total force of 14 deputies. The Border Patrol operates in the area but focuses on migration-related enforcement rather than missing persons investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation technically has jurisdiction over crimes involving cross-border movement but rarely opens investigations into missing persons cases unless family members can demonstrate that the disappearance involves specific federal violations. That jurisdictional environment produces the bureaucratic silence the community has been documenting around the Steins disappearances, and the silence is exactly what the pattern in this location depends on for its continuation. Vanlifer families who have attempted to escalate Steins disappearances through federal channels have consistently reported that no single federal agency accepts primary responsibility for the cases. The Border Patrol claims the disappearances fall outside its migration enforcement mandate. The Drug Enforcement Administration claims the cases do not meet the threshold for narcotics-related investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation claims that county sheriff jurisdiction takes precedence unless specific federal crimes can be documented. The result is a bureaucratic environment in which Vanlifer disappearances at Steins can wait months or years before any formal investigation begins, and by the time an investigation begins, the physical evidence that might have supported it has typically already degraded past useful investigative value. And the worst abandoned ghost town in America for a Vanlifer to shut down at night is a single location along a road so isolated that the nearest developed community sits over 40 miles away, and that the community has been quietly warning each other about for longer than any other ghost town on this list. Its name is Ballarat, California. This is where Sarah Kowalski disappeared on the 11th of April, 2026. Ballarat sits in the Panamint Valley on the western side of Death Valley National Park, accessible through a single dirt road that leaves Panamint Valley Road approximately 3.5 miles from the nearest paved highway. The town itself consists of a handful of adobe ruins, a small caretaker residence occupied intermittently, and the surrounding open desert that extends for tens of miles in every direction, with no cellular coverage, no reliable water sources, and no emergency response infrastructure closer than the ranger station at Panamint Springs, approximately 30 miles distant. The Panamint Valley itself carries a historical weight that the community has been aware of for decades. Charles Manson and members of his followers occupied Barker Ranch approximately 15 miles from Ballarat during the period preceding their arrest in October 1969, and the valley has functioned as a location associated with disappearances and violence long before the current van life community began arriving to photograph the ruins. Sarah was 31 years old, a freelance illustrator, and 3 years into a full-time van life she had documented across social media platforms with an audience of approximately 12,000 followers. She had converted her 2017 Ford Transit over 5 months while living with her mother in Minneapolis, and she had spent the previous winter photographing desert landscapes across the Mojave and Panamint valleys for a book project she was developing with a small independent publisher. Her van was found 5 days after she went missing at a pullout approximately 1 mile from the Ballarat ruins, with the driver's door closed but unlocked, her wallet on the passenger seat with $416 in cash, her phone on the dashboard showing full battery and 0 signal bars, her camera equipment intact on the passenger side floor, her hiking boots at the base of the driver's seat, and no sign of Sarah anywhere. 13 Vanlifers have disappeared from the Panamint Valley area, including the Ballarat corridor, in the past 5 years. 11 of the 13 were solo travelers. 8 of the 11 solo travelers were women. The Inyo County Sheriff, which patrols the entire Panamint Valley with the same 19 deputies that also cover the Cerro Gordo area and every other corner of a jurisdiction larger than Vermont, does not conduct extended searches beyond the initial 96-hour window unless family members raise external funding to continue the operation. Sarah's mother in Minneapolis still checks her Instagram every morning. Her younger brother has been operating a private search coordination account that has attracted over 4,000 followers from the van life community. Her older sister has been filing Freedom of Information Act requests with every agency that might have documentation related to the disappearance, and the total response across the past 6 months amounts to 14 pages of documentation from what should be an active investigation. The California Department of Justice Missing Persons Database contains Sarah's file with an incident date, an incident location, and no documented investigative activity across the 6 months since her disappearance was reported. Their family has spent $21,000 of their own money hiring private search coordinators, drone operators, and cadaver dogs to comb the drainages around the Ballarat corridor. They found nothing. The Inyo County Sheriff has not developed a new lead in 5 months. The National Park Service Law Enforcement Branch, whose jurisdiction ends at the Death Valley boundary approximately 12 miles from Ballarat, has stated that the disappearance occurred outside its jurisdiction and therefore falls under county responsibility. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has never contacted the family. Every list has a worst, and Ballarat earned it. If you are running the Panamint Valley or any of the ghost towns on this list in the next 12 months, do these 4 things. Carry a satellite communicator with active subscription and keep it charged at all times. File your itinerary with 3 separate people and check in with each of them at fixed times daily. Never overnight, at any pullout beyond the second-mile marker from any developed community anywhere near a ghost town on this list. And if a vehicle you do not recognize follows you into any pullout near an abandoned ghost town, do not stop. Keep driving to the nearest developed community even if it adds 90 minutes to your evening. Sarah Kowalski did everything right except the last one, so that is the map. From the roadside pullouts near Bodie all the way to a single dirt road in the Panamint Valley, where a 31-year-old illustrator disappeared and the federal government has never called her family back. Every ghost town on this list got here through the same combination of conditions. Jurisdictional gaps between county, state, federal, and tribal authorities that produce bureaucratic silence rather than active investigation. Cellular dead zones that eliminate emergency communication during precisely the hours when emergency response might otherwise be effective. County sheriff's departments too small to handle the search patterns the terrain requires. And a pattern of Vanlifer disappearances that no state agency has ever formally acknowledged despite documentation the community has been maintaining across every ghost town on this list for over a decade. Meanwhile, the country continues to allocate hundreds of billions of dollars per year to defense budgets and stadium subsidies, while the rural sheriff's departments responsible for investigating disappearances across the American West operate with total staffing levels smaller than the police force of a suburban high school. The money exists. It has always existed. The decision to allocate it to protecting the residential vehicle population traveling through the abandoned ghost towns of the American West has not been made. And it is not going to be made this year either, which means the map you carry in your head is the only warning system you are going to get. Drop the abandoned ghost town your community has been quietly warning about in the comments. The pullout, the access road, the location that you would tell a new Vanlifer to skip because somebody starting out this month has not learned it yet. And if this list earned a spot on the map you carry in your head, subscribe. It is about the only thing left in van life that is still free.